Greetings, I'm Dike Rostant. Welcome back to the TTT News. The last time we spoke with the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, it was still in the Christmas season. It is time to go in-depth on progress made during that time with Chief Sec Farley Augustine. Welcome, Chief Sec. How are you? Thank you for making the time, Mr. Augustine. How you do?
I'm good. Not bad at all.
All right, and I want to ask about the progress 3 months in, please, in terms of the state of employment of contract or employment contracts is one of the things that we last discussed, and it was described as a low-hanging fruit. Now that you're inside, the fruit get any taller, or we're working on that?
Well, we have been constantly working on upgrading contract employment within the THA. So we started with the TRHA, and we're using a rolling system whereby once your contract is coming to an end in under a year's time, we are actually going to issue with a 3-year renewal contract as opposed to the single year or a 3-month or a 1 month or even a 9-month. And that will allow for, much more efficiency on the side of the employee. That will allow the employee to have some measure of financial stability and better ease in doing business with the financial institutions. And so we have already started that. We also have been looking at gratuity payments, and we have increased our work output in terms of delivering on gratuity payments for contracted employees. We have worked on increments for our teachers. That too, we have started moving and pushing for through the system. And so it was a bit of a push and pull, but we're getting there. We're moving on those very important matters.
All right, and I know that there would have been some issues with regard to some places being restructured, and we'll get into that in just a bit, but I'm wondering how much has your focus changed, being on the inside and seeing what the actual lay of the land is?
Well, it's one thing when you're on the outside, but when you're on the inside and you get intimate knowledge about how some of these structures work, you get to realize that in some places we have oddities, we have units that just did not work, that just did not meet the desired outcome, that did not follow through on contractual arrangements. And while on one hand, we are in support of longer-term contracts in lieu of people being on the establishment, and that's always a priority, getting people on the establishment, we also have to appreciate that in instances where people weren't doing what they're contracted to do, where units have been failing, where desired objectives have not been met, then we have to restructure, because it also has to be balanced with that thing we call productivity. So it's a balancing act that is just called governance.
And speaking to that balancing at Chief Sec, I want to ask, because we're getting very close to Easter, we're almost inside Holy Week. What is the status of hotels, guest houses, other accommodations as you look towards that Easter? And I'm sure people in the industry are very happy to have the rollback of these health protocols with regard to the pandemic.
Well, we are extremely happy about that. In fact, before the Prime Minister made the announcement, when he first intimated on a platform in Trinidad that he was thinking about that, I reached out to him to say, look, I am in support of rolling back some of these protocols, because the economy cannot stay closed any longer. We just cannot afford it. We have also seen an increase in the number of flights with Caribbean Airlines, although we are not back to pre-COVID number of flights, and we're working towards that. But Tobago is poised to do very well during the Easter vacation. Caribbean Airlines increased the number of flights, and I could tell you that in a matter of some hours, those increased flights were all gone, all fully booked. And so there may be a need for even more to really and truly go back to pre-COVID numbers in terms of the number of flights. The Port Authority has increased the number of sailings. In fact, they added approximately 7,000 extra sailings, and when extra seats, 7,000 extra seats. And when I met with the Port Authority last week, I was informed that they only had about 1,000 left. So we are expecting a bumper season. Our hoteliers, our bed and breakfast, Airbnbs, and so on, they are all preparing for this bumper season. They are all preparing their rooms. Our restaurants are preparing. The promoters on the island are preparing. And we ourselves in the THA, we are preparing. And we have been working with the TTPS in anticipating the huge influx over the Easter. But we are open for business, and we welcome everyone to come across for business. Of course, allow me to throw in the caveat. Please, as you do so, be safe, protect yourself. Remember that COVID has not disappeared. It is still with us.
And as always, Tobago, she becomes more beautiful, so that is definitely something that we're looking forward to. But in terms of these rollback and of the measures, looking at meeting the people where they are at, this is from a larger scale kind of communication that you have to one-on-one. Talk to me a little bit about the roving district office these days, please.
Right, so across the THA, we have been, before we got here as executives, we have been doing these roving days, whereby we will take our offices out to the street, where we'll go and meet people where they're at, as opposed to them always having to come to the office. I mean, coincidentally, today is one of those days that I have opened my office to the public. So I have a public day going on. I have scores of people on the outside scheduled to meet with me. I pause it to have this interview. And it is part of us opening out what we call governance to one that is transparent, one where people can be involved, one where people can feel as though their representatives are close to them. So these roving days are not new insofar as how we did business in the past. We just have not stopped now that we are in the executive. I was at Speyside on Tuesday this week, and I saw the last individual at 11:25 p.m. That's the time I saw the last individual. It was quite a number of people, and I was patient. I was tired, no doubt, but I was patient. I kept smiling. I kept encouraging my staff. I said, please, you have to hold it out. We can't send them back home. They're here to see us. They have concerns, they have issues. And so, we kept at it until we were through. And with everyone we met, we set deadlines, we set timelines by which we will call them back, by which we will update them on their concerns. And it's not that in these roving days that we promise that we could deliver on every single thing that people want, but we promise that we will keep in communication with them. So on the areas that is a bit challenging for us to deliver in a speedy time, they will know, and they will also know that we are still thinking about them and we are working on their issues.
And that getting back to individuals is really important. And like you said the last time, it's not as though you want people to say, hey, he get biggish. But we continue with the conversation. When we come back, we're speaking with the Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Augustine. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are getting updates from the Tobago House of Assembly with Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, taking some time out from dealing with his constituents, so we're grateful for that. And Chief Sec, some of the further work, because you said you reached out to the Prime Minister when he spoke about rolling back some of these things, and what is some of the further work that is happening with central government? We've been hearing something about data upgrades. There was a meeting with the planning minister, etc. Are these long days ahead, or are some of these changes just on the horizon?
Actually, some of these changes are just on the horizon. And I promised the Tobagonians on election night that though there are significant philosophical differences between the party I lead and the party that leads the nation down at the central government, that we will seek to be as professional as possible, firm, no doubt, on what Tobagonians desire, but professional and respectful, and that we will engage. We will open our doors to conversations. And we have been doing just that. Some of these things are on the horizon. In fact, yesterday I met with the new Minister of Planning, Penelope Beckers. I have met with the Minister of Digital Transformation, Minister Bacchus. In fact, Minister Bacchus and myself, we held a 2-day conference with all our techies within the THA system as we prepared them for the rollout of digitization and digitalization. Our techies even yesterday would bring training, follow-up training, and preparing for the rollout of what we call IFMIS, which is our digitized financial platforms, which will allow to bring all our finances and our banking platforms into a sort of a singular digital space, which will allow for greater efficiency in terms of paying contractors and paying staff members and managing the businesses of the THA. We are ready to lead in digitization, and the central government seem to be suggesting that they will support such a thrust. We also have had some gains in terms of agriculture. We have had some gains in terms of responsiveness through the Ministry of Finance in Trinidad. And so a lot of these things are on the horizon. Some will take a little longer than the others, but we are working them out, and we are working them out respectfully. It does not mean that occasionally we won't disagree, and it does not mean that when it is needed that we won't exchange political blows, but what it means is that in the act of governing, we find ways to circumvent our differences and to work together.
And that actually leads me to the question about managing the work of the people around the fact that politicians engage in politics. And sometimes it feels as though some of that conflict is needed, because if everybody's just going down, holding hands the same way, it seems as though the status quo doesn't change. According to the saying, it's only when breeze blow you see foul boomsy. So in terms of being able to organize some of those things, but keeping the main thing, how is it that you're able to do that, and do you try to spread that ethos around the people who are working with you as well?
Well, most definitely. And one of the things we take for granted in this country, Dike, is that we have a working democracy. When we look at what's happening around the globe now, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine, and the arguments around the world, the arguments about reparations within the region, the arguments about whether countries in the region should still be under colonial rule of the Queen, or whether it should become a republic. All of these are things that Trinidad and Tobago are blessed to have avoided, because we have a working democracy. And having a working democracy means that from time to time, you will have opposing parties challenge each other. Having a working democracy means that from time to time, people might even be rude in their expressions. But having a working democracy also means that we have to find ways to put our differences on the same table, work them out, find middle ground, and work on achieving some results. Part of governing is the act of negotiating, is the act sometimes of setting aside some of your own beliefs in favor of a greater good. And so it's a balancing act. One thing I'm certain about, though, is that we will not compromise, we will not sell out Tobago's core values and Tobago's core desires in governance. But there are many things that we can agree on that does not require conflict. And so my position is those things that we can agree on, those simple common sense things that are not as complex, that we could just easily work out, we will work them out quickly and dispense with them. The other things that we have staunch disagreement on, we will disagree, we will debate in the public space, we'll allow the public to join in on those debates. But those two, while they will take longer to be worked out, we will work them out at some point. And that's just what governing is about. And at the end of the day, Trinidad and Tobago has two executives that run the two islands. There is the executive, that is the cabinet, that manages the country that is Trinidad and Tobago, and there is an executive that is part of the Tobago House of Assembly structure. And if the two executives can't find ways to work together, then this country that is Trinidad and Tobago will have some upheavals that we won't be able to manage. And so we just have to figure it out as we go along. Yes, it's early days still, and I expect some RABs to come in the not so distant future. When that time comes, trust me, I'm prepared for it. But in areas where there's no need for RABs and where we agree and where we could collaborate and partner, by all means, let's partner. Part of having a mature democracy, Dike, is being able to separate things, being able to say, we agree on these matters and we disagree strongly on these matters. And disagreeing strongly on these matters, that does not mean that we are enemies to the point where we want to kill each other, but it simply means we disagree strongly on these matters, and we will continue to do so until we find some middle ground. But that's part of governing, and it's nothing we should be too concerned about.
And in terms of this being part of governance, how do you think this example of people seeing what it is you're doing and how it is you're going about doing it, how does that affect the building future leaders? And I'm looking specifically at the Charlottesville Police Youth Club, that example, the Miss Social Media and Cyberbullying Vice President, allowing others to flourish and creating more leaders instead of followers, according to your words. Also having different students shadow your work. What do you think, what do you hope they will get in terms of seeing the example that you're setting right about now?
I am hoping that I could help in changing the political culture of Trinidad and Tobago. We're not that old by any stretch of the imagination as a country. Comparatively, we are a baby in comparison to many of the mature democracies around the world. But it does not mean that we can't lead the rest of the world in managing differences and conflicts. Trinidad and Tobago being the most diverse there is in the Caribbean region, we have already demonstrated and lived the lives that shows what it means to be diverse and live together. We are not all Hindus in this country, but around the Wali, everyone is looking for some Korean roti and butter shot to eat. We are not all Christians in this country, but around Christmas time, several people are there buying gifts and participating in the festivities of the moment. We are not all Muslims in the country, but around Eid, everyone is being respectful and eating all of these delicacies that pop up around that time. So by our very life experiences, we ought to know how to live with diversity. And diversity makes us richer, it makes us better, and it gives us an advantage when it comes to our developmental trajectory. Therefore, we need that to translate into leadership and governance of the country. And an understanding that we all don't have to agree, we all don't have to have the same position. And yes, we could disagree strongly and even at times be rude to each other, but that should not stop us from finding ways, actively looking for ways to work together. And trust me, I don't think I will ever support Dr. Rowley's party. I don't see myself ever becoming a PNM. In fact, that will never happen. I always say, must never say never, that will never happen. But that doesn't mean that on matters that are simple and that there is some agreement on, we can't agree. We should agree and get them done with. But that doesn't stop me at times when I disagree and disagree strongly from indicating such to the public. It's just powerful because it's part of what governance is. And hopefully if we conduct business in this way, we will be finding ways to show our young leaders that you don't have to kill each other. You don't have to have gang wars. You don't have to have turf wars. You don't have to draw these ridiculous lines and get at each other if you disagree.
But in terms of getting at each other, one of the things, though, that is not in our favor right now is time. So hopefully this just means that it opens the possibility of another conversation. But thank you very much, Chief Secretary of the Tobago House of Assembly, Farley Augustine, giving us some idea into what's been happening in the 3 months since last we spoke. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.